You ever look back at a relationship and realize the moment it actually ended wasn't the screaming? It was the moment you stopped trying to explain yourself. That's what happened to Ramona. She said the strangest part wasn't even the insult. It was how normal the night looked before everything fell apart. The candles were lit. The food was already getting cold. Her phone kept lighting up with her boyfriend's location somewhere downtown in Jacksonville while thunder rolled in outside. And even after waiting almost 3 hours, she still fixed her face when she heard his truck pull into the driveway. Like maybe he'd walk through the door and suddenly remember who she was to him. But instead, he walked in, loosened his tie, looked at the anniversary dinner she spent half a paycheck putting together, and actually laughed. Then he said something she would never forget for the rest of her life. "You're not wife material." And the wild part? He still thought she was the kind of woman who would stay no matter how badly he treated her. What he didn't realize was somebody else had already started noticing the quiet ways she was disappearing inside that relationship. And before that night was over, Ramona would grab a suitcase, walk out that front door, and slowly change all of their lives forever. Welcome to Mr. Graham's family. To every single one of you, thank you for the love and support. It means everything to me, and I promise to keep leveling up and bringing you the best content possible. If you're new here, don't be shy. Comment where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button to officially become part of the family. Jacksonville had a way of hiding unhappy people in plain sight. You could drive past the river on a Saturday evening and see couples eating outside under string lights, people laughing over drinks, families taking pictures near the water like everybody had figured life out. Even the air played tricks on you there. Warm wind off the St. John's, palm trees moving slow, music drifting out of restaurants downtown. From the outside, everything looked lighter than it really was. Ramona used to think adulthood would eventually feel stable if she worked hard enough. Like one day the stress would settle down and people would start treating each other better. By 28, she knew that wasn't true. Most mornings started before sunrise. Her apartment alarm would go off at 5:45, and she'd lie there for a minute staring at the ceiling fan before forcing herself up. She wasn't one of those naturally cheerful morning people. She needed silence first. Coffee, shower, scrubs. Some mornings she'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror tying her curls back while mentally listing everything she needed to handle that week. Her mother's prescriptions, rent, one overdue electric bill she kept promising herself she'd pay Friday. Her younger cousin needing help with school supplies again. It felt like somebody always needed something, and somehow she always said yes. The pediatric dental office sat on the south side of Jacksonville, in a beige building squeezed between a chiropractor's office and a tax preparation place that somehow stayed open year-round. The sign outside had cartoon teeth wearing sunglasses. Ramona parked in the same corner spot every morning because the shade kept her old Honda from overheating by afternoon. Inside, the office smelled like bubblegum fluoride and disinfectant. By 8:30, children were already crying in the waiting room. "You told me this wasn't gonna hurt." One little boy yelled at his mother while trying to slide off the chair. Ramona crouched beside him carefully. "What's your name again?" "Micah." "Well, Micah," she said, lowering her voice, "between me and you, I don't trust dentists either." The little boy blinked at her. "You don't?" "Nah, they're suspicious." He laughed despite himself. 5 minutes later, he was walking calmly toward the exam room, holding her hand. That was Ramona's gift. People settled around her. Kids, old people, stressed parents, cashiers, strangers standing beside her in checkout lines. Something about the way she listened made people feel safe enough to unclench for a second. Her coworkers noticed it too. "How are you getting these kids to cooperate?" Dr. Patel asked one afternoon after a screaming 6-year-old suddenly became calm with Ramona nearby. Ramona shrugged while organizing paperwork. "I just talk to them regular." "You missed your calling," he joked. "You should have been a therapist." She smiled politely, but she already spent enough time carrying other people's emotions for free. Around lunchtime, she usually called her mother to check in. "You take your blood pressure medicine today?" Her mother sucked her teeth immediately. "Girl, yes." "You lying." "I forgot yesterday." "Not today." Ramona leaned back in her chair, rubbing her forehead. "Ma, you gotta stop skipping doses. You sound old, and you stress me out." Her mother laughed softly, then asked the same thing she asked almost every week. "You eating enough?" Ramona stared at the vending machine across the break room. You hesitated. I'm at work. That means no. Conversations with her mother always circled back to caretaking. Even when Ramona was exhausted, somebody else still needed checking on. That started young. She grew up on Jacksonville's north side in a cramped house that somehow always had extra people inside it. Cousins sleeping on couches, church women stopping by unannounced, aluminum trays of baked macaroni showing up after funerals, surgeries, breakups, job losses. Her grandmother believed feeding people solved half of life's problems. Sit down somewhere and eat, she'd say, anytime tension entered the room. Money stayed tight most of Ramona's childhood. Her mother worked double shifts as a nurse assistant for years, sometimes leaving before sunrise and coming home after Ramona was already asleep. So Ramona learned early how to become helpful instead of needy. By 10 years old, she already understood which bills were late based on how quietly her mother moved through the kitchen. By middle school, she knew not to ask for expensive shoes near rent week. And by high school, she had mastered pretending things didn't hurt her. That last habit followed her longest. One Sunday afternoon, years earlier, the family gathered at Aunt Denise's house after church. Kids ran through the backyard screaming, while old R&B played through a portable speaker near the grill. Ramona stood inside helping wash dishes while her aunt dried plates beside her. "You still talking to that friend of yours?" Aunt Denise asked. "Which one?" "The one always borrowing money." "Oh, Keisha." Ramona shrugged. "She paying me back Friday." Aunt Denise gave her a look over the top of her glasses. "That girl been paying you back Friday for 3 months." Ramona laughed. "She going through stuff." "Baby, everybody going through stuff." Her aunt stacked another plate into the cabinet, harder than necessary. "You gotta stop letting people make a home out of your kindness." Ramona hated conversations like this because they always made her feel defensive. "I'm not letting anybody use me." "I'm serious." Aunt Denise turned toward her fully. Then, "You think because you love hard, people gonna automatically love you right back the same way? Life don't work like that." Ramona rolled her eyes lightly, uncomfortable already. "You sound cynical." "No, baby. I sound experienced." The conversation stayed with her longer than she admitted, but even then, part of Ramona believed patience could eventually fix relationships, that if you kept showing up for people correctly, they'd eventually appreciate you properly. So when birthdays got forgotten, she brushed it off. When friends canceled plans last minute, she understood. When family members called only when they needed favors, she answered anyway. Keeping peace became automatic. Sometimes she swallowed feelings so fast she barely noticed she was hurt until hours later. There were moments, small moments, when she caught herself wondering why caring for other people came easier than caring for herself. But life moved fast enough that she rarely sat with those thoughts long. Then one Thursday evening changed everything. Rain had started coming down right as she got off work. Not heavy yet, just enough to make Jacksonville traffic irritating. Ramona walked across the gas station parking lot near Riverside, balancing her purse, phone, and a plastic bag with cold medicine for her mother. Her scrubs were damp at the shoulders by the time she climbed into her Honda. The engine clicked once, then nothing. She closed her eyes immediately. "No, come on. Another try." Nothing. Her chest tightened. Payday was still 3 days away, and the little money left in her account already had somewhere to go. She sat there gripping the steering wheel while cars rolled in and out of the station around her. People pumping gas, music thumping from somebody's speakers nearby. Nobody paying attention. Ramona looked down at her phone, debating who she could even call without becoming a burden. That thought came naturally to her too. Before she could decide, headlights pulled into the empty space beside her. A silver pickup truck. A man stepped out wearing office clothes, loosened at the collar, like he'd had a long day himself. Tall, clean cut, maybe mid-30s. He glanced toward her car after noticing the hood wasn't fully latched. He tapped lightly on her window. Ramona hesitated. Jacksonville taught women to be careful. Still, something about him didn't feel aggressive. Mostly tired. She cracked the window slightly. "You okay?" he asked. "My car won't start." He looked toward the dashboard. "Battery? I don't know. You mind if I take a look?" Ramona studied him for another second before unlocking the door. Rain tapped steadily against the roof while he checked under the hood. "You been ignoring the signs?" he asked. What signs? The struggling start before complete betrayal. She laughed, despite herself. Okay, first of all, rude. Nah, he said, grinning slightly. Cars always warn people before they give up. Folks just don't listen. After a few minutes, he managed to get the engine running again. Relief hit her so fast she almost looked embarrassed. Oh my God, thank you. You owe me coffee now. Ramona blinked. What? You heard me, he said, shutting the hood carefully. I just saved your evening. She smiled before she could stop herself. And standing there beside that gas pump with rainwater soaking the edge of her scrub pants, Ramona had no idea she was looking at the man who would eventually teach her the difference between being loved and being emotionally consumed. Ramona almost didn't call him. For 2 days, the number sat in her phone under Clement gas station because she hadn't decided whether the whole thing had been genuine flirting or just a man being nice for 20 minutes during the rain. Alicia laughed when she saw it. You saved him like AAA in your contacts? I didn't know his last name. You could have asked. Ramona rolled her eyes from the passenger seat while Alicia drove them to Target. I probably wasn't even going to call him. I'm serious. Then why you smiling at your phone like that? Ramona looked out the window to hide it. The truth was, she liked how calm he seemed. No weird pressure, no corny lines, no trying too hard. At 28, she was tired of men who performed confidence louder than they actually lived it. Men who talked about business ideas that never existed. Men who always needed rides, money, emotional rescuing, or somewhere to stay temporarily. Clement had felt different in those few minutes at the gas station. Stable. That word mattered more to her than chemistry did back then. She finally texted him 3 nights later, during her lunch break. This is Ramona. My car survived another day, by the way. His reply came almost immediately. That means I deserve dinner now. Inflation raised the price. She laughed hard enough for another assistant to glance over at her. Their first date happened at a seafood place near Riverside where the tables were crowded too close together, and the ceiling fans barely worked. Clement showed up wearing a navy button-down that looked expensive without trying to look expensive. He stood when she walked in. That alone surprised her. You actually came, he said. You sound shocked. I thought you were screening me for serial killer behavior first. I still might be. He smiled at that. Dinner felt easy. That was the dangerous part. Easy. He asked questions and listened to the answers. Real answers, too. Not the kind where somebody's already waiting for their turn to speak again. He asked about her family, her job, why she worked with kids. At one point, she admitted she almost became a nurse because most women in her family worked in healthcare somehow. What stopped you? He asked. Ramona shrugged. Money, timing, life. Clement nodded slowly, like he actually understood what that meant. By the end of the night, she realized almost 2 hours had passed without her checking her phone once. That felt unusual. Outside the restaurant, humid air wrapped around the parking lot while traffic moved steadily down the street. I had a good time, Clement said. Me too. You always this guarded? Ramona looked at him carefully. You always this observant? He grinned a little. Comes with age. There it is. What? You finding a way to remind me you older. I am older. By like 9 years. Experience matters. She shook her head, laughing. Back then, the age difference comforted her more than it worried her. Clement seemed established in ways men her age often weren't. He managed operations for a construction supply company, owned a townhouse, paid bills on time, had health insurance. Even the small things impressed her then. A stocked refrigerator, matching furniture, a retirement account. Those things sounded boring until you spent years dating instability. In the beginning, Clement treated her thoughtfully, not extravagantly, just consistently enough to make her feel considered. One Friday morning, flowers arrived unexpectedly at the dental office after she mentioned having a rough week. Her co-workers crowded around immediately. Ooh, Jasmine sang from the front desk. Somebody got a man. Ramona felt heat rise into her face. The note attached simply said, Thought you could use something pretty to look at today. Clement. She read it 3 times before folding it carefully into her purse. Another time, after her mother's blood pressure spiked and Ramona spent 6 straight hours in the emergency room with her, Clement showed up at the hospital around midnight carrying food she hadn't even realized she was hungry for. You didn't have to come, she told him. You sounded tired. That answer sat with her. Nobody had ever really responded to her exhaustion before. Usually she was the one holding everybody else together. Her family noticed the difference too, especially her mother. One Thanksgiving, Clement stood in the kitchen helping wash dishes while football played loudly in the living room. You don't gotta do all that, Ramona's mother told him. I ate enough for 3 people. Least I can do. You trying to impress us? Nah, Clement said. I'm trying to survive being invited back. Her mother laughed hard at that. Later that night, while putting leftovers away, she leaned toward Ramona carefully. He's solid. Ramona tried not to smile too obviously. I know. You happy? The question caught her off guard because she hadn't been asked directly in a long time. I think so. And she meant it. At least she thought she did. Looking back later, Ramona would realize the relationship didn't turn unhealthy all at once. There wasn't one giant moment where Clement transformed into somebody else. It happened slowly enough that she kept adjusting to it, instead of confronting it. The first signs sounded harmless. You overthink everything. You too sensitive sometimes. You always assume the worst. At first, she defended him to herself automatically. Everybody gets irritated sometimes. Everybody says things wrong. Nobody's perfect. Then came the jokes. That part confused her, because they always happened in front of other people. One night during dinner with his coworkers, somebody mentioned lending money to a cousin who never paid them back. Clement laughed. Ramona would give away her last dollar if somebody looked sad enough. The table laughed lightly. Ramona smiled too because everybody else was smiling, but something in her stomach tightened. Later in the car, she said, You make me sound gullible. You are gullible. I'm generous. There's a difference? He said it casually, eyes still on the road. Ramona stared out the window after that, not angry exactly, just embarrassed that the comment bothered her more than she wanted it to. Moments like that started stacking quietly. If she got emotional during disagreements, Clement called her dramatic. If she asked for reassurance, he sounded annoyed instead of comforting. One night she asked if he still saw marriage in their future. He kept scrolling through his phone. Why you always trying to rush life? I'm not rushing. It's always something with you. Timeline this, feelings that. I was asking a question, and I'm answering it. The conversation died there. What made everything confusing was that Clement wasn't cruel all the time. That would have been easier to recognize. Some days he still held her hand in public, still brought her coffee occasionally, still kissed her forehead before work. Those moments made Ramona question herself whenever something hurt. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe relationships are just hard. Maybe adulthood changes people. Around their 2nd year together, she moved into his townhouse on the west side of Jacksonville. At first, it felt exciting. Shared groceries, movie nights on the couch, falling asleep beside somebody consistently. She brought pieces of herself slowly into the space. A framed picture of her grandmother, throw pillows Clement pretended to hate, candles that smelled like vanilla and cedarwood. But after moving in together, something shifted in ways she couldn't fully explain. The townhouse started feeling more like his space than theirs. His routines, his preferences, his moods controlling the atmosphere. If he came home irritated from work, the entire evening bent around it. Ramona adjusted without noticing at first, lowered her voice more, stopped bringing up topics that might start tension, waited for better moods to discuss important things. One Saturday morning, she accidentally shrank herself so naturally it scared her afterward. She stood in the kitchen making breakfast, while Clement sat watching highlights on television. You want to go to my cousin's birthday thing later? She asked. Clement sighed immediately. Do I have to? You don't have to. Your family always got some event. Ramona nodded quickly. Okay, never mind. A few seconds later, she realized she hadn't even asked what he wanted to do instead. She had canceled her own desire automatically to avoid friction. That bothered her all afternoon. But by evening, she convinced herself she was being dramatic again. That became the pattern. Discomfort, self-doubt, silence. Then, one summer evening at a backyard barbecue, she met Isaac for the first time. And without realizing it yet, Ramona was about to encounter somebody who noticed the version of her that had slowly started disappearing. The barbecue happened in August, the kind of Jacksonville heat that made everybody complain before noon and still show up anyway. One of Clement's co-workers had bought a house near Orange Park and decided that meant he needed to host people every weekend. By 4 in the afternoon, the backyard already smelled like charcoal smoke, grilled chicken, and sunscreen. Music played through outdoor speakers too loudly for conversation, so everybody kept talking over each other. Ramona stood near the patio table fixing her paper plate, while Clement argued with 2 men about football rankings like the outcome personally affected him. "You can't tell me Lamar ain't top 3, Clement said, pointing a beer bottle around for emphasis. "That man choking playoffs every year. You don't know ball." Ramona smiled faintly to herself. She had heard versions of this same argument at least 20 times. A little girl ran past and nearly crashed into her legs. Ramona caught the child's juice before it spilled. "Slow down, baby. Sorry." The girl sprinted off immediately. "Reflexes," a voice said beside her. Ramona turned. That was the first time she saw Isaac. He stood holding a tray of uncooked burgers near the grill area. Taller than she expected up close. Dark green t-shirt, basketball shorts, wire-frame glasses that gave him a calmer look than most of Clement's friends. "You work with kids or something?" he asked. "How you know? You caught that juice like you do it professionally." She laughed. "Pediatric dental office." "Ah, that explains the patience. I don't always have patience. Could have fooled me." Before she could answer, somebody from the grill yelled his name. "Isaac, man, you burning daylight over there." He lifted the tray slightly. "Duty calls." That probably should have been the end of the interaction, but throughout the evening, Ramona kept noticing him, not in a dramatic way, just little things. While most people crowded under the covered patio talking loudly, Isaac moved around helping without needing attention for it, folding chairs, coolers, trash bags, checking on an older neighbor who slowly walked through the side gate carrying a homemade pie. "Miss Evelyn, why you carrying this by yourself?" he asked immediately. "Boy, my legs still work." "Barely. Give me that." The woman laughed while handing over the pie dish. Later, while people fixed second plates, Ramona ended up sitting alone near the edge of the patio trying to cool off from the heat. Her curls were sticking slightly at the back of her neck. Isaac sat down 2 chairs away, holding a bottle of water. "You hiding too?" he asked. "I'm recovering." "From the weather or the people?" "Both." He nodded like that answer made complete sense. For a minute they sat listening to music drifting from the backyard speaker while somebody inside the house yelled during a domino game. "You from Jacksonville originally?" he asked. "Born and raised." "North Side?" Ramona looked surprised. "How you know that?" "You say baby, exactly like my aunties do." She laughed harder than she expected. "You from here too?" "Mostly. Moved around some after college, then came back." "What you do?" "Teach history at a high school." "That sounds exhausting." "It is exhausting." "You like it?" Isaac took a second before answering. "Some days I feel like I'm making a difference. Other days I feel like I'm arguing with teenagers who think Google replaced education." Ramona smiled. The conversation stayed easy after that. No flirting, no trying to impress each other, just talking. At one point, Clement finally wandered over carrying another drink. "There y'all are," he said. "Ramona probably telling you how difficult I am." "She hasn't talked about you once, actually," Isaac said. Clement laughed loudly. "Damn, that cold." Ramona smiled politely, but something about the exchange sat oddly with her. Clement always turned interactions into performances once other people were around, like every conversation needed a winner. As the night continued, the group gathered around folding tables outside, while arguments bounced between sports, politics, rising rent prices, and terrible dating stories. Ramona started telling a story about one of her younger patients accidentally biting Dr. Patel during an appointment. Halfway through, Clement interrupted. "See, this why I couldn't work with kids. I'd lose my mind." A few people laughed. Ramona tried continuing. "So the little boy looked at him and probably charged y'all extra after." Clement cut in again. More laughter. She stopped talking. Nobody seemed to notice, except Isaac. A few minutes later, while the conversation shifted elsewhere, he leaned slightly toward her. "What happened with the kid?" Ramona blinked. The story." "Oh." She smiled faintly. "He bit Dr. Patel, then asked for a sticker after." Isaac laughed immediately. "Honestly, respect." That tiny moment stayed with her longer than it should have, because it wasn't really about the story. It was the fact that somebody noticed she got cut off at all. Over the next year, Isaac became part of the extended social circle naturally. Cookouts, birthday dinners, game nights, random gatherings at sports bars downtown. He and Clement had known each other since college. At first, Ramona didn't understand how they were even close friends. Clement entered rooms like he needed everybody's attention immediately. Loud greetings, big opinions, stories that got slightly more exaggerated every time he told them. Isaac stayed more observant, the kind of person who listened fully before responding, the kind of man who noticed details most people skipped over. One evening during dinner at Clement's townhouse, Ramona mentioned her mother had another blood pressure scare earlier that week. Clement barely looked up from his phone. She gotta take better care of herself. Ramona nodded quietly. 2 days later, Isaac texted her unexpectedly, "How your mom doing now?" She stared at the message for a second, not because it was romantic, because it was thoughtful. Her own boyfriend had already forgotten the conversation entirely. Things like that kept happening. At a birthday dinner, Isaac remembered she hated raw onions and switched plates with her without making it a big deal. During a game night, he noticed she'd gotten unusually quiet after Clement mocked the way she pronounced a word. "You said it fine," Isaac told her later while helping clean up cups in the kitchen. Ramona shrugged. "Apparently not. He does that a lot." She pretended not to understand the question. "Does what?" "Turns you into the punchline." The room suddenly felt warmer. Ramona stacked plastic cups carefully to avoid answering too fast. "He jokes around." Isaac studied her face for a second, then nodded once. But he didn't look convinced. That conversation bothered her afterward more than she expected. Not because Isaac said anything inappropriate, because part of her knew he was right. Still, loyalty mattered deeply to Ramona. She wasn't the kind of woman who emotionally drifted toward other men, because her relationship got difficult. So every time she noticed herself feeling emotionally lighter around Isaac, she corrected herself internally. "That's Clement's friend. Don't make things weird. Focus on your relationship." And honestly, Isaac never crossed boundaries, never flirted recklessly, never tried to wedge himself between them. If anything, that made him harder to ignore. One Friday evening, the three of them met downtown near the Riverwalk for drinks after Clement got off work. The restaurant buzzed with tourists and office workers escaping the week. Boats drifted slowly across the water outside, while orange sunset light reflected off the buildings. Ramona had spent the entire day exhausted after dealing with difficult patients and insurance issues at work. Halfway through dinner, Clement started venting about problems at his company. "These people would be lost without me," he said while shaking his head. "I swear, I carry that whole place." "You always say that," Ramona replied lightly, "because it's true. You think nobody else works hard?" Clement looked at her across the table. "That's not what I said. I know. I'm just saying, you always gotta debate something." The irritation in his voice came fast enough to make her stop speaking immediately. A short silence followed. Isaac looked down at his drink. Clement went back to talking like nothing happened. But Ramona barely heard the rest of the conversation after that. She hated moments like this because they made her feel childish for even having emotions. By the time they walked outside, humidity still clung heavily to the air even after sunset. Clement got distracted by a work call near the curb. Ramona leaned against the railing overlooking the river while waiting. Isaac stood nearby quietly for a minute before speaking. "You okay?" "Yeah," he nodded slowly, unconvinced again. "You don't gotta do that every time." "Do what?" "Pretend stuff doesn't bother you." Ramona crossed her arms loosely. "I'm fine. I didn't say you weren't." The sounds of traffic drifted through the street behind them. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Isaac looked out toward the dark water and said something that followed her all the way home that night. "You ever get tired of making yourself smaller for people?" Ramona didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, she had never allowed herself to ask that question out loud before. By the third year of living together, Ramona could usually tell what kind of evening it was going to be before Clement even walked through the door. The sound of his truck pulling into the driveway mattered. Fast parking usually meant irritated. Slow parking meant distracted. If he slammed the driver's door, she already knew to keep conversation short for at least an hour. She never said this out loud because hearing it spoken would have made the situation sound worse than she wanted to believe it was. Instead, she adapted around his moods the way people adjust to bad weather. One Tuesday evening, she stood at the stove stirring pasta while reruns of a home renovation show played in the background. Clement walked in still wearing his work badge. "You cook already?" he asked. "Yeah. I know you said you had meetings all day." He kissed her cheek quickly, then opened the refrigerator. Ramona watched him over her shoulder. "How was work?" "Tiring." "What happened?" "The same thing that always happens. People incompetent. Me fixing it." She nodded. That answer usually meant, don't ask follow-up questions. So, she changed the subject. "Oh, my mom asked if we coming by Sunday." Clement grabbed a bottled water. "For what?" "Dinner. We were there like 2 weeks ago." Ramona stared down into the pot. "Okay, you already told her yes?" "No, but you wanted to." "I was asking." He exhaled hard through his nose. Not angry exactly, but irritated enough to make her shoulders tighten automatically. "Ramona, every weekend can't be about family obligations." "All right." The conversation ended there. 10 minutes later, they ate dinner in front of the television, while she mentally replayed the interaction, trying to figure out what she'd done wrong. That became normal. Small moments that left her anxious afterward. Not because Clement screamed or cursed constantly. He rarely did. It was more confusing than that. He made her feel unreasonable for having emotional reactions at all. Sometimes the criticism came wrapped inside jokes. One night, they met friends at a sports bar downtown. Everybody crowded around high tables watching a playoff game while waitresses moved through the packed room carrying wings and pitchers. Ramona told a story about accidentally locking herself out of the townhouse earlier that week. Before she finished, Clement laughed. She'd lose her head if it wasn't attached. The group chuckled. Ramona smiled too, out of reflex. Then Clement added, "I swear she functioned off stress and confusion." More laughter. Somebody clapped him on the shoulder. "Man, y'all sound married already." "Hell nah," Clement replied quickly. The table laughed again, but Ramona felt heat creep into her face. She took a sip of her drink to hide it. Later in the car, she stared out the passenger window while downtown lights blurred across the glass. "You embarrassed me back there," she said finally. "For joking? You do it a lot." "Oh my God. I'm serious. You too sensitive for me sometimes, Ramona." There it was again. Too sensitive. The phrase followed almost every disagreement eventually. If she cried during arguments, she was emotional. If she went quiet, she was dramatic. If she explained why something hurt her feelings, Clement accused her of turning small issues into therapy sessions. "You always analyzing stuff," he complained once after she told him his tone felt dismissive. "Because communication matters." "No, because you need constant reassurance." That sentence stayed in her head for days, especially because part of her feared he might be right. At work, nobody described her as difficult. Patients loved her. Co-workers trusted her. Friends called her dependable. So why did she feel like such a burden at home? One afternoon during lunch break, Jasmine from the front desk noticed Ramona barely touching her food. "You okay?" "I'm fine." Ramona smiled weakly. "Why everybody always say, when they don't believe you?" "Because your face looked tired." Jasmine lowered her voice. "Everything cool with your man?" Ramona immediately defended him. "He just stressed from work." "That ain't what I asked." Ramona picked at her salad silently. Jasmine studied her for another second. "You know therapy ain't only for crazy people, right?" Ramona laughed awkwardly. "Girl, I'm serious. You stay anxious lately." "I'm not anxious. You apologized to me 3 times this morning because the printer jammed." Ramona opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Because she had. The thing was, apologizing had become automatic. "Sorry the laundry not done yet. Sorry I forgot. Sorry for asking. Sorry for bringing it up. Sorry for crying. Sorry for misunderstanding." She used the word so often that sometimes Clement would answer before she even finished the sentence. There you go, apologizing again. But he never noticed he was part of the reason she did it. Or maybe he noticed and liked the control it gave him. Ramona hated even thinking that possibility, so she kept defending him in her mind. Clement works hard. Clement under pressure. Clement didn't have an easy childhood either. Love meant understanding people through hard seasons. That's what she told herself. One Friday evening, she brought up marriage again by accident, not intentionally. The conversation drifted there after attending Alicia's engagement party. Back at the townhouse, Ramona stood in the bathroom removing makeup, while Clement sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through sports highlights. Alicia looked happy tonight, she said. Eee. They finally set a wedding date. Good for them. Ramona wiped cleanser from her face carefully. You ever think about what kind of wedding you'd want? Clement didn't answer immediately. That pause alone made her stomach tighten. Finally, he shrugged without looking up. I don't really think about weddings. Not even generally. Ramona. What? You always trying to turn regular conversations into pressure. She set the towel down slowly. It was a question, and I answered it. The room felt smaller suddenly. I'm not saying tomorrow, she said carefully. We've been together years now, so obviously I think about the future sometimes. Clement tossed his phone onto the bed with visible irritation. See? This what I mean. What? You got this timeline in your head. I'm 2008. Clement. And I want to know if we moving toward the same things. He stared at her for a second before standing up. You know what's exhausting? Ramona folded her arms automatically. Why every serious conversation somehow become exhausting for you? Because you make everything heavy. The words landed harder than he probably intended. Or maybe exactly as hard as he intended. He grabbed a t-shirt from the dresser drawer. I deal with enough stress all day. I come home. Now I gotta reassure you too. Ramona looked down at the bathroom counter because she could already feel tears threatening, and she hated crying during arguments with him. Once he saw tears, the conversation usually became about her emotions instead of the actual issue, so she swallowed everything back. I wasn't trying to fight. I know, he muttered. You never trying to fight. It still happens though. After he walked downstairs, Ramona stayed in the bathroom longer than necessary pretending to organize skincare products. Mostly she needed time to compose herself. That night she lay awake beside him staring at the ceiling fan while Clement slept peacefully. She wondered when conversations about her needs started making her feel guilty. A week later, Isaac noticed the changes again before she said anything. The three of them met for brunch near San Marco on a humid Sunday afternoon. The restaurant overflowed with post-church crowds and crying toddlers. Clement spent most of the meal complaining about work politics. Isaac listened for a while before looking toward Ramona. How's your mom doing lately? Better. She's still bullying doctors? Ramona smiled despite herself. Absolutely. There she go, Clement interrupted suddenly. Watch. Mention her mama and she'll talk for 30 straight minutes. The comment hit sharper than the others because it came out of nowhere. Isaac glanced briefly at Clement, then back at her. I asked, he said calmly. Clement shrugged and went back to eating. Ramona forced a smile onto her face, but she barely spoke the rest of brunch. When they walked toward the parking lot afterward, Clement got distracted by another phone call from work and stepped away. Isaac slowed his pace beside her. You been sleeping okay? Ramona looked surprised. Why? You look tired lately. I'm all right. She laughed weakly. Y'all gotta stop doing that. Doing what? That thing. Isaac smiled slightly, but didn't let the subject go completely. You don't gotta answer me if you don't want. I know. A few steps passed. Then he said, I just hope you're taking care of yourself too. That sentence bothered her the entire drive home, because she honestly couldn't remember the last time she had. Their 4th anniversary landed on a Thursday that year. Ramona requested the day off almost 3 weeks early because she wanted everything to feel thoughtful instead of rushed, not extravagant. She already knew Clement wasn't the type to care about expensive romantic gestures. At least that's what he always said whenever she hinted at wanting more effort. You watch too many movies, he told her once, after she mentioned couples taking weekend trips together. So this time, she focused on smaller things. His favorite meal, a clean house, good music, one uninterrupted evening where maybe they could feel close again. That mattered more to her than gifts did. The Monday before their anniversary, Ramona stopped at Publix after work, carrying a handwritten grocery list folded inside her purse. The store felt freezing after the August heat outside. She moved aisle by aisle, carefully calculating prices in her head. Salmon fillets, fresh asparagus, potatoes, heavy cream, brown sugar, peaches, vanilla ice cream. By the time she reached checkout, she already knew she'd spent more than she should have. The cashier scanned the peaches last. "You making cobbler?" "My grandma's recipe." "Ooh." The woman smiled. "You trying to impress somebody?" Ramona laughed softly. "Something like that." Back in the parking lot, she sat inside her Honda for a second before starting the engine. Part of her felt foolish for trying this hard. Another part kept hoping effort still mattered. Tuesday evening after work, she stopped at the mall just to look and ended up buying a dark green dress she absolutely did not need. It wasn't flashy. Simple neckline, soft fabric, fitted enough to make her feel attractive without looking like she tried too hard. She stared at the price tag for almost a full minute before finally walking to the register. While the cashier folded the dress into tissue paper, guilt started creeping in immediately. "You should save money. This is unnecessary." But then another thought answered back quietly. "You deserve to feel nice sometimes too." That voice sounded unfamiliar. Wednesday night she cleaned the townhouse top to bottom after Clement fell asleep downstairs watching television. Around midnight, she stood in the kitchen placing fresh flowers into a vase, while old Anita Baker songs played low from her phone speaker. For a few minutes, she actually felt hopeful again. Maybe they both just got disconnected lately. Maybe life and stress and routine swallowed too much of the relationship. Maybe this dinner could reset something. The next morning, Clement kissed her quickly before work. "You off today?" "Yeah, must be nice." She smiled. "I told you weeks ago." You still coming home early?" "I'll try." The answer disappointed her more than she expected. Still, she pushed the feeling aside. By noon, the kitchen smelled like garlic, butter, and seasoning. Ramona moved around cooking the same way her grandmother taught her years earlier, cleaning as she went, tasting sauces with the back of the spoon, humming under her breath without realizing it. The peach cobbler sat cooling near the stove by late afternoon. She even ironed the table runner because tiny details mattered to her. Around 6:30, she finally showered and got dressed. The green dress fit perfectly. For a second, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at herself differently than she had in months. Not prettier exactly, just visible again. Downstairs, candles flickered softly against the dining table while rain tapped against the windows outside. Jacksonville storms always rolled in fast this time of year. At 7:02, she checked her phone. No text yet. That wasn't unusual. Clement often got caught in late meetings. By 7:40, the food started cooling. Ramona texted first, "You still on the way?" No response. She reheated the salmon once, then again at 8:15. Outside, thunder rolled low across the sky while headlights moved through wet streets beyond the townhouse window. Ramona checked Clement's location. Still downtown. Her stomach tightened slowly. At 8:47, Alicia called. "Happy anniversary," she sang dramatically through the speaker. Ramona forced brightness into her voice. "Thank you. You sound tired." "I'm okay." "Where y'all going?" "We staying in tonight." "Ooh, fancy." Ramona glanced toward the untouched table. Alicia paused. "You all right for real?" "He probably just working late." "That wasn't my question." Ramona swallowed. "He forgot last year too." There was silence on the other end for a second. "Ramona, it's fine." "No, it's not." Ramona stared down at the candles burning lower. "He been stressed lately." Alicia sighed heavily enough for the sound to crackle through the phone. "You spend too much energy explaining people." Ramona changed the subject immediately after that. By 9:30, the mashed potatoes had gone stiff around the edges. Her makeup no longer looked fresh. The entire house felt too quiet. She tried distracting herself by straightening things that already looked fine, folding throw blankets, wiping counters, rearranging silverware. Every few minutes, she checked the driveway anyway. At 10:11, headlights finally flashed through the living room window. Relief hit her first, then embarrassment right behind it. Because despite everything, part of her was still excited. He came home. Ramona stood when the front door opened. Clement walked inside, smelling faintly like whiskey, rainwater, and outside air. His tie hung loose around his collar. He looked exhausted, but not apologetic. His eyes moved across the dim lighting and decorated table. What is all this? Ramona blinked. For half a second, she thought maybe he was joking. Our anniversary dinner. Clement stared at her blankly, then cursed under his breath. Damn. The word landed heavily in the room. Ramona tried to keep her expression steady. I called you. I know. You forgot? He tossed his keys onto the kitchen counter harder than necessary. I had a lot going on today. That's why I texted. And I said I know. She looked at the cold plates sitting on the table. I waited all evening. Clement rubbed both hands over his face roughly. Ramona, I'm not doing this tonight. Doing what? This. He gestured vaguely around the room. The guilt trip. Her chest tightened immediately. I'm not trying to guilt you. Then what you trying to do? She stared at him in disbelief. I planned this for us. You could have reminded me earlier. Ramona let out a short laugh. Because the statement sounded so unfair, she almost thought she misheard it. I shouldn't have to remind you about our anniversary. You know how stressful my job is. And you know this mattered to me. There you go. What does that mean? You always need some emotional performance to feel secure. The sentence knocked the air out of her more than yelling would have. Ramona folded her arms tightly against herself. I cooked dinner, Clement, and I appreciate it. His tone said the opposite. But you act like if I don't react exactly how you imagined, now I'm the villain. No, she said carefully. I act hurt because you forgot something important to me. He laughed once, without humor, and walked toward the refrigerator. You know what your problem is? Ramona stared at him. You think doing stuff like this automatically make you a wife. Her heartbeat slowed strangely after that sentence. Not sped up. Slowed down. What? Clement grabbed a bottled water and shut the refrigerator door. You heard me. No. Explain it. He looked irritated that she asked. You play house all the time, Ramona. Candles, dinners, acting like somebody's wife instead of actually being one. The room suddenly felt colder. I've been with you 4 years. And you still talk about me like I'm temporary. That's because you too emotional. She looked at him carefully then. Years of conversations. Years of apologizing. Years of trying to word things softer. Years of shrinking arguments before they became problems. Something inside her felt exhausted all at once. Clement kept talking, almost talking at her now. You always need validation. You overthink every damn thing. Honestly, you should be grateful somebody like me stayed around this long. The sentence echoed in the room after he finished. Ramona looked down at the candles first. Wax melted down the sides slowly. The food she spent all day cooking sat untouched. Her dress suddenly felt stupid. And standing there in that kitchen, she realized something painful. She had spent years trying to earn softness from somebody who benefited from withholding it. Clement was still speaking when she turned and walked upstairs. Where are you going? She didn't answer. At first he sounded more annoyed than concerned. Ramona. She opened the closet and pulled down her suitcase. That got his attention. You serious right now? She started folding clothes carefully. Clement leaned against the doorway watching her. You doing all this over one argument? Ramona zipped the side compartment slowly before finally looking up. It's not one argument. Oh my God. You forgot our anniversary, and somehow I'm comforting you. You always dramatic when your feelings hurt. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said the sentence she didn't even realize she'd been carrying for years. I'm tired of feeling lonely standing next to somebody. Clement looked at her like she'd said something irrational, not painful, not serious, just inconvenient. You don't mean that, he muttered. Ramona bent down and reached for another stack of clothes from the dresser. For the first time in a long time, she stopped trying to make sure he understood her emotionally. That alone felt strange. Usually during arguments, she worked hard to explain herself correctly. Softer tone, better wording, less emotion. She spent years trying to present her pain in ways that wouldn't upset him too much. Now she didn't have energy for any of it. Clement watched her pack another shirt into the suitcase. So, where are you even gonna go? My cousin Alicia said I can stay with her a while. He gave a short laugh. You already planned this? No. You called her that fast, though. Ramona didn't answer, because the truth was, Alicia already knew. Not the details, maybe, but enough. People close to Ramona had started noticing the version of her that existed around Clement. The constant apologizing, the hesitation before speaking, the way she checked his moods before relaxing. Her family wasn't blind. They were waiting for her to catch up to what they saw. Clement stepped fully into the room now. You seriously leaving over hurt feelings? Ramona stopped folding clothes long enough to look at him. You think this started tonight? You acting like I cheated on you, or hit you or something. There it was, the comparison, as if emotional damage only counted once it became extreme enough to justify publicly. Ramona grabbed her toiletry bag from the bathroom. You know what's crazy? She said. You keep naming worse things like that's supposed to erase what you actually do. Clement rubbed his forehead hard. See, this what I mean. Everything turns into some deep emotional conversation with you. No, everything turns into me explaining why I'm hurt, while you explain why it shouldn't matter. He stared at her for a second after that, not angry anymore, confused, like he genuinely couldn't understand why the relationship suddenly felt unstable when he'd spent years assuming she would adapt indefinitely. You gonna come back in 2 days anyway, he said finally. Ramona zipped the suitcase closed. Maybe a year earlier, hearing that would have made her argue harder, would have made her desperate to prove the relationship still mattered. Now the comment only made her sad, because even at the end, he still didn't understand her. Downstairs, the candles still burned faintly near the untouched dinner table. Ramona slipped on her sandals near the front door, while Clement stood behind her in the kitchen. You throwing away 4 years over emotions. She reached for the suitcase handle. No, she said softly. I stayed 4 years because of emotions. Then she walked out. No screaming, no dramatic scene, just rainwater hitting the driveway, while thunder rolled somewhere over the city. The moment the townhouse disappeared in her rearview mirror, Ramona expected to feel stronger than she did. Instead, she cried so hard at a red light near Roosevelt Boulevard, she had to pull over for a minute, not because she regretted leaving, because leaving something familiar still hurts even when it's unhealthy. Alicia opened the apartment door before Ramona even knocked fully. Oh, baby. That was all it took. Ramona broke down against her cousin's shoulder immediately. Alicia guided her inside carefully, while taking the suitcase from her hand. I got you. Come inside. The apartment smelled like vanilla candles and fried fish from earlier dinner. Reality TV played low in the background, while rain tapped against the balcony doors. Ramona sat on the couch still wearing the green dress, mascara smudged under one eye. Alicia disappeared briefly into the kitchen and returned with wine. You hungry? Ramona laughed weakly through tears. I cooked a whole anniversary dinner. Oof. Yeah. Alicia handed her a wine glass. What happened? Ramona tried explaining it at first. The forgotten anniversary, the argument, the comments. But halfway through talking she realized how exhausting it sounded, hearing herself summarize years of emotional erosion into one conversation. Alicia listened without interrupting. When Ramona finally stopped speaking, her cousin leaned back against the couch slowly. You know what your problem been? Ramona wiped beneath her eyes carefully. I'm sure you finna tell me. You keep grading this man on a curve. What? You keep saying, well, he don't cheat. He don't hit me. He pay bills. Alicia shook her head. Meanwhile, you over there, shrinking every year. Ramona stared into her wine glass. He wasn't always like this. Maybe not. But this is who he is now. That sentence sat heavy between them. Around 2 a.m, Ramona lay awake on Alicia's couch, staring into darkness while traffic hummed faintly outside. Her phone buzzed once on the coffee table. Clement, you done being dramatic yet? Ramona turned the phone face down immediately. A few minutes later, another message arrived. Come home tomorrow so we can talk normal. Then, you embarrassing both of us. She didn't respond, but she still slept, holding the phone near her chest anyway. That part embarrassed her. The next few weeks felt emotionally disorienting in ways nobody prepared her for. She still reached for her phone, automatically during lunch breaks, to text Clement about random things, funny patient stories, memes, grocery reminders. Then she'd remember. One Saturday morning she stood frozen in Target staring at 2 brands of chips because her brain instinctively started calculating which snacks Clement preferred. The realization hit so suddenly she had to abandon the cart and walk outside. Alicia found her crying in the parking lot 20 minutes later. What happened? Ramona laughed shakily. I don't even know. Yes, you do. I stood there, thinking about what chips he liked. Alicia sighed softly and hugged her. That man trained you to orbit around him. The words hurt because they felt true. Healing turned out to be far less glamorous than social media made it sound. Some days, Ramona felt peaceful. Other days, she almost called Clement, simply because loneliness felt familiar. She missed routines more than romance at first. The sound of another person in the house, shared television noise, cooking for somebody. Even arguments had created structure in her life. Without the relationship, she realized how much of herself had disappeared into caretaking. One afternoon at work, Jasmine cornered her near the supply closet. You finally left him? Ramona blinked. Who told you? Girl, your face. Ramona laughed despite herself. Jasmine folded her arms. So now can I say what I've been wanting to say for like a year? That sounds dangerous. You've been anxious too long. Ramona looked down. He made me feel like everything was my fault. Jasmine nodded immediately. That's because confused people start apologizing for everything. The sentence followed Ramona home that evening. A week later, she finally scheduled therapy. Even typing the intake form made her uncomfortable. Reason for visit? She stared at the question almost a full minute. Eventually she typed, I think I forgot how to tell when my feelings matter. The first session felt awkward. Ramona kept downplaying everything automatically. He's not a bad person. Sometimes I overreact too. He did care about me in his own way. The therapist listened patiently before asking one question that made Ramona pause completely. When was the last time you felt emotionally safe in that relationship? Ramona opened her mouth, then stopped, because she honestly couldn't remember. The first thing Ramona noticed after leaving Clement was how loud her own thoughts were. Not immediately. At first, everything felt crowded. Her cousin Alicia's apartment, work stress, family questions, therapy appointments, random crying spells that arrived at inconvenient times. But after a few weeks, another feeling started creeping in underneath all that noise. Space. Space to think, without preparing for somebody else's reaction first. One Saturday morning, she woke up before Alicia and sat alone on the small apartment balcony wrapped in a blanket watching traffic move below. Jacksonville mornings felt softer before the heat settled in. Dog walkers, joggers, church people heading somewhere early in pressed clothes. Ramona held a cup of coffee between both hands and realized nobody was upset with her. Nobody was irritated she woke up too early. Nobody needed emotional management before breakfast. The realization should have felt comforting. Instead, she started crying again. Healing embarrassed her sometimes. People online made it sound empowering all the time. Hair appointments, glow-ups, vacation pictures with captions about peace and self-love. Her reality looked messier. Some nights she missed Clement enough to scare herself. Other nights she replayed arguments and got angry all over again. And occasionally she missed the version of herself that still believed patience could eventually fix everything. Therapy forced her to sit with truths she usually avoided. Every Tuesday evening after work, she drove across town to a small counseling office near Mandarin, where calming instrumental music played too softly through lobby speakers. The therapist, Dr. Howard, asked questions Ramona couldn't dodge with politeness. What makes you feel responsible for other people's emotions? How often do you ignore your own discomfort to keep relationships stable? What would happen if somebody got upset with you? That last question bothered her most, because the honest answer was simple. She hated disappointing people, even now, especially now. One session, Dr. Howard asked her to describe what love looked like growing up. Ramona thought for a second. My mama worked all the time, she said slowly. My grandma took care of everybody, like everybody, sick people, cousins, church members, didn't matter. And what did you learn from that? That you show love by being dependable. Dr. Howard nodded. And when did you learn being dependable meant ignoring yourself? Ramona looked down at her hands after that. She started journaling because the therapist suggested it. At first, she hated it. The blank pages made her uncomfortable. She'd sit there, holding a pen, with no idea what to write besides surface-level things. Today was stressful. Work was busy. Need groceries. But eventually the entries got more honest, sometimes painfully honest. One night she wrote, I don't know what parts of my personality are actually mine anymore. Another entry said, I keep thinking, love means proving I can survive hard treatment. She closed the notebook immediately after writing that one. Alicia noticed changes before Ramona did. One evening they sat on the couch eating Chinese takeout, while reality TV screamed in the background. "You laughed more today," Alicia said casually. Ramona looked up from her container. "What?" "At dinner with your mama. You was louder." Ramona shrugged. "I'm always loud around family." "No," Alicia replied. "You used to check yourself constantly." That observation stayed with her, because it was true. Even at family gatherings with Clement, part of her always monitored his moods in the background. Was he bored? Ready to leave? Annoyed? Embarrassed by her? She never realized how exhausting that constant awareness became until it disappeared. Around that same time, she started taking walks alone after work. Nothing dramatic, just simple walks along the riverfront sometimes before driving back to Alicia's apartment. The water calmed her. Boats drifting slowly, tourists taking pictures, street musicians performing for distracted crowds. Some evenings she bought herself ice cream and sat alone watching sunset colors reflect against the water. At first, being alone in public felt uncomfortable, like she needed a reason to occupy space. But gradually, solitude stopped feeling like rejection. She also became more careful with money. Living with Clement had quietly created financial habits around keeping peace too. Random takeout because he didn't want what she cooked. Expensive gifts during tense periods, contributing toward his lifestyle more than she admitted to herself. Now she tracked everything: budget spreadsheets, savings goals, actual plans. The process made her feel more adult than romance had in a long time. Meanwhile, Clement kept texting. At first, the messages sounded irritated. "You seriously still doing this?" Then defensive. "Everybody got problems in relationships." Then softer. "Can we talk?" Eventually, apologies arrived too. "I know I hurt you. I've been thinking a lot. I miss you." But even through the apologies, Ramona noticed something. Most of his messages centered around his feelings, his loneliness, his regret, his frustration, rarely hers. One night, he called 3 times in a row while she folded laundry on Alicia's couch. Finally, she answered. "What? You couldn't pick up earlier?" "I was busy." A pause. "You still staying over there?" Ramona closed her eyes briefly. "Yes." "You gonna punish me forever?" There it was again. Her leaving became something happening to him. "I'm not punishing you." "Then what are you doing?" Ramona stared at the pile of towels beside her, trying to breathe again. Clement sighed heavily into the phone. "You act like I was some monster." "I never said that." "Then why everybody treating me crazy?" Ramona almost laughed, not because anything felt funny, because even now, he still measured pain by whether he considered himself a bad person. "You hurt me for a long time, Clement." "I said I was sorry." "You said that after I left." Another pause, then his voice softened slightly. "You know I love you, though." Ramona leaned back against the couch cushions, staring at the ceiling. Months earlier, hearing those words would have melted half her anger instantly. Now they mostly made her tired, because love had become his explanation for behavior instead of evidence against it. "I gotta go," she said quietly. "So, that's it?" "No, that's all I have energy for tonight." After hanging up, she sat there holding the phone for a minute. Alicia looked over from the kitchen. "You okay?" Ramona nodded slowly. "I think I'm finally hearing conversations clearly now." That same week, her mother invited her over for Sunday dinner. The old house on the north side still smelled the same every time she walked in: grease, laundry detergent, and something baking in the oven. Her mother looked healthier lately, though she still ignored half her dietary restrictions. "You, losing weight," her mother complained while seasoning greens. "I'm fine. You stressed." "Everybody keeps saying that, because your face tell the truth before your mouth do." Ramona smiled faintly and reached for plates from the cabinet. Dinner that night felt lighter than family gatherings had in years. No tension sitting beside her, no monitoring another person's mood, no rehearsing conversations beforehand. At one point, Aunt Denise looked across the table and said, "You look more awake lately." Ramona laughed. "What does that even mean?" "It means you was disappearing before." Nobody at the table argued with that statement, not even her mother. Later that evening, while helping wash dishes, Ramona asked quietly, "Y'all noticed it that bad?" Her mother rinsed a plate slowly before answering. "I noticed you apologizing too much." Ramona looked down. For what? Everything. Water ran steadily from the faucet between them. Then her mother said something that hit deeper than Ramona expected. A peaceful woman don't say sorry every 5 minutes in her own house. That sentence followed her home. And for the first time in a very long time, Ramona started wondering who she might become if she stopped organizing her entire life around earning love. 3 months after leaving Clement, Ramona stopped at a bookstore cafe downtown after therapy because she didn't feel like going straight home yet. Rain had passed through earlier that afternoon, leaving the sidewalks wet and the air heavy. Jacksonville always smelled different after storms, cleaner for about 20 minutes, then humid again. The bookstore sat tucked between a wine bar and an old clothing boutique near the riverfront. Ramona liked it because nobody bothered anybody there. People came to read, work, or pretend to read while staring into coffee cups thinking about their lives. That evening, the place buzzed softly with low conversation and espresso machines hissing behind the counter. Ramona wandered through the aisles longer than necessary before finally settling near the back with a chai latte and a book she wasn't actually paying attention to. Her therapy session still sat heavy in her chest. Dr. Howard had asked her earlier, "What do you think you deserve from a relationship?" Ramona couldn't answer immediately, not because she lacked thoughts, because the question felt unfamiliar. She spent years focused on what she could give people, rarely what she required in return. Now she sat staring at the same page for almost 10 minutes without reading a sentence. History section. Putting you to sleep. Ramona looked up fast. Isaac stood near the end of the table holding 2 books under one arm. For a second, she genuinely thought she imagined him. Then she laughed softly from surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing. You read history books for fun?" "I teach history. I gotta pretend this exciting." She shook her head, smiling. He looked at her carefully then, not intensely, just observant, like always. "You look better." The comment caught her off guard because there was no hidden meaning behind it, no flirtation layered underneath. He simply sounded relieved. Ramona glanced down at her cup. "I've been trying." Isaac nodded toward the empty chair across from her. "You mind?" "No." He sat down slowly, setting the books beside him. For a minute, they talked about ordinary things, work, traffic, how expensive groceries suddenly felt lately. The conversation moved easily in a way Ramona forgot adult conversations could. No defensiveness, no emotional calculation. At one point, Isaac frowned toward her untouched drink. "That chai been full since I walked up." Ramona looked down. "Oh, you all right?" She hesitated. Normally she answered questions like that, automatically. "I'm fine." This time she shrugged honestly instead, still figuring stuff out. Isaac nodded once, like he respected the answer without needing details. He didn't ask invasive questions about Clement, didn't fish for gossip, didn't act excited she was single now. That mattered more than she expected. Most people got weirdly curious after breakups. Isaac simply treated her like a person going through something difficult. Eventually he glanced at his watch. "I should probably grade papers before I start lying to myself about doing it later." Ramona laughed. "You one of those teachers that carry work everywhere?" "Unfortunately." He stood, then paused. "If you ever want to grab dinner or something sometime." He rubbed the back of his neck briefly. No pressure. Ramona looked at him carefully. There it was. Not aggressive, not slick, just honest. And oddly enough, that made her more nervous, because sincerity felt unfamiliar now. "I'd like that," she said softly. Their first dinner happened a week later at a small seafood spot near the river. Nothing fancy. Plastic menus, fried shrimp baskets, ceiling fans working overtime against the humidity. Ramona almost canceled twice beforehand, not because she didn't want to go, because part of her still felt emotionally fragile in ways she couldn't fully explain. She worried about sending the wrong message, worried about what people would think, worried about herself most of all. What if I'm only attached because he's kind? What if I don't even know what healthy feels like anymore? But the moment dinner started, some of that anxiety loosened. Isaac didn't treat the evening like an audition. No exaggerated charm, no trying to impress her with money or confidence. Half the conversation centered around ridiculous things his students said in class. One kid asked me if the Cold War happened during winter, he said, while laughing into his drink. Ramona covered her mouth, laughing. "No. Yes. Please tell me you joking. I wish. At another point, she admitted she started therapy recently. Isaac nodded without making it awkward. That takes courage. Ramona stared at him, suspiciously. You say that too calmly. What's that supposed to mean? Most people get weird when therapy come up. That sounds like most people's problem. She smiled into her water glass. There were no games with him, no moments where she felt subtly judged for being emotional. After dinner, they walked along the riverfront, while boats drifted through dark water nearby. The breeze carried music from bars farther down the street. You know what I noticed? Isaac said. What? You answer questions slower now. Ramona laughed lightly. Is that bad? No. He looked ahead toward the water. I think you used to rush to make people comfortable. The observation landed deeper than she admitted, because he was right again. She spent years responding too quickly, fixing tension too quickly, apologizing too quickly. Now she paused more, thought more. Sometimes she even let conversations sit unfinished, instead of panicking to smooth them over. Over the next several weeks, she and Isaac kept seeing each other casually. Sometimes dinner, sometimes walks, sometimes sitting in his apartment eating takeout while thunderstorms rolled outside. His apartment surprised her the first time she visited. Books everywhere, basketballs stacked near the hallway closet, a framed picture of his parents beside an old graduation photo. The place looked lived in instead of curated. You got 87 history books and one fork, Ramona said after opening a kitchen drawer. Isaac laughed from the stove. I know where everything important is. That's concerning. Yet you still here. That became the rhythm between them. Easy conversation, small, teasing moments, long discussions that drifted naturally from serious to stupid within minutes. One evening while walking downtown, Ramona realized something strange. She never felt tense, waiting for Isaac's reactions. If she disagreed with him, he listened. If she got emotional, he didn't act burdened. If she went quiet, he asked questions instead of accusations. The difference affected her physically before she fully understood it emotionally. Less headaches, better sleep, less second-guessing every sentence after saying it. Still, fear lingered underneath everything. One night after dinner, Isaac drove her back to Alicia's apartment during heavy rain. Windshield wipers moved steadily, while soft jazz played low through the speakers. You thinking hard? He said after noticing her staring out the window too long. Ramona rubbed her thumb against the edge of her sleeve. Can I tell you something without it sounding crazy? Probably. She exhaled slowly. Sometimes I get nervous when things feel calm. Isaac glanced toward her briefly. How come? Because calm usually meant something bad was coming eventually. The confession sat between them, while rain hammered against the windshield. Isaac nodded slowly like he understood more than she explained. You know, he said carefully, people get used to surviving certain kinds of love. Ramona looked over at him. And when they finally experience peace, he shrugged lightly. Their brain don't trust it yet. Neither spoke for a few seconds after that. Then Isaac smiled faintly. For what it's worth, I'm not in a hurry. That sentence stayed with her long after she closed her apartment door that night, because for the first time in years, somebody cared about her comfort without making her feel guilty for needing it. By the time winter reached Jacksonville, which mostly meant cooler mornings and people pretending 60 degrees was freezing, Ramona had gotten used to hearing from Isaac almost every day, not in an overwhelming way. He wasn't the type to demand constant attention or turn texting into emotional surveillance. Some mornings she woke up to simple messages. Hope your day easier than yesterday. Or, one of my students tried to convince me Abraham Lincoln invented electricity. Pray for me. The consistency felt strange at first. Clement used to disappear emotionally whenever work stressed him out. Entire conversations depended on his mood that day. Isaac stayed steady. That steadiness slowly started reaching parts of Ramona she didn't realize were still tense. One Saturday afternoon, they grocery shopped together because Isaac claimed he needed adult supervision buying food. You got cereal, frozen pizza, and hot sauce, Ramona said while looking inside his cart. That's balanced. That's depression. Isaac laughed loud enough for another shopper to glance over. An hour later, they stood arguing in the pasta aisle over whether generic noodles tasted different from name brands. You can't tell the difference, Isaac insisted. I absolutely can. You making that up. You grew up eating cafeteria food. Your opinion invalid. He grabbed his chest dramatically. That was disrespectful. Ramona laughed so hard, she had to lean against the cart for a second, and somewhere between canned tomatoes and pasta sauce, she realized something important. She felt relaxed, not performing, not carefully measuring herself, just existing. That scared her almost as much as it comforted her, because healthy attention felt unfamiliar enough that part of her still waited for hidden conditions underneath it. One evening in February, Ramona came home from work exhausted after a difficult day at the dental office. A little girl had screamed through an entire procedure, another parent complained about insurance coverage, and Dr. Patel accidentally double-booked appointments all afternoon. By the time Isaac picked her up for dinner, she barely had energy to talk. "You okay?" he asked after noticing how quiet she'd been. "Long day. You want to still go out?" Ramona leaned her head back against the seat. "Honestly, I kinda don't want to be around people." "Cool." She blinked at him. "That easy?" "What you mean?" With Clement, changing plans always turned into a whole thing. Isaac shrugged while turning at a red light. "You tired? We'll adapt." Adapt. The word stayed with her. No guilt, no irritation, no passive-aggressive comments about wasted time. They ended up eating Chinese takeout on his couch while watching terrible reality television and making fun of contestants. Halfway through the episode, Ramona realized she'd spent the entire evening waiting for him to become annoyed by her mood. It never happened. That same month, Isaac met her mother properly for the first time since the breakup. Not at a big family gathering, just Sunday dinner. Ramona worried about it more than she admitted. Her mother liked Isaac years earlier as Clement's friend, but this felt different now, more delicate. "You nervous?" Isaac asked while driving over. "Yes." "Why?" "Because black mothers can smell emotional dishonesty." Isaac laughed. "That specific?" "Very." Dinner turned out easier than expected. Her mother watched Isaac carefully, the same way older women evaluate character through small things instead of speeches. Did he help carry groceries inside? Did he listen while people talked? Did he acknowledge everybody at the table? Isaac passed every test without seeming aware he was being tested. At one point during dessert, Ramona got distracted helping her younger cousin clean spilled juice off the floor. When she returned, she overheard Aunt Denise talking low to Isaac near the kitchen doorway. "You patient?" her aunt asked bluntly. Isaac looked confused. "I think so." "You better be." Ramona walked in halfway through the conversation. "What y'all talking about?" "Nothing," Aunt Denise replied immediately. "That means something." Isaac grinned into his sweet tea. "I'm being interrogated." "You should be," Ramona's mother said from across the room. Everybody laughed. But later that night, after leaving the house, Isaac grew quieter in the car. "What?" Ramona asked. "Your family protective of you?" She looked out the passenger window for a second. "They watched me disappear in real time." Isaac tightened both hands slightly around the steering wheel. "I hated seeing that." The honesty in his voice made her chest ache unexpectedly, because he wasn't talking like somebody who secretly wanted her relationship to fail. He sounded like somebody who cared about her pain long before romance entered the picture. Their first disagreement happened 2 weeks later. Small, ordinary, which honestly made it more important. Isaac canceled dinner plans last minute after one of his basketball players got suspended and needed help dealing with school issues. Ramona answered his text with, "No problem," but underneath that response, old fears started waking up fast. By evening, she convinced herself he was losing interest, pulling away, changing. The anxiety grew irrationally loud the longer she sat alone thinking. Around 9 o'clock, Isaac called. "You sound off," he said immediately. "I'm fine." She laughed, despite herself. "Okay, maybe not. What happened?" Ramona hesitated, then finally admitted, "I know this sounds dumb, but when plans change suddenly, my brain automatically thinks people don't want to deal with me anymore." Isaac stayed quiet long enough for her stomach to tighten. Then he said, "That doesn't sound dumb. You don't think I'm overreacting?" "No, I think your brain learns survival patterns." Ramona leaned back against Alicia's couch cushion slowly. With Clement, distance usually meant tension coming. "I'm not Clement." "I know." "No," Isaac said gently. "I need you to know that, fully." The conversation could have easily turned defensive. Instead, they talked honestly for almost an hour. No blaming, no emotional punishment. After hanging up, Ramona sat there stunned by how different conflict felt when somebody wasn't trying to win. Spring arrived gradually after that. Longer evenings, warmer air, more time spent outside, walking near the river or sitting on Isaac's apartment balcony listening to music drift from nearby buildings. One rainy night in April, they sat inside his apartment while thunder rattled windows softly. Ramona curled beneath a blanket on the couch while Isaac graded papers at the dining table. "You know what your problem is?" she asked suddenly. Isaac looked up cautiously. "That never starts good. You care too much about commas. I teach history, not grammar. You got 3 dictionaries on your table. Those are resources." She smiled. A few minutes later, Isaac set the papers aside and walked toward the couch. "You seem lighter lately." Ramona looked down at the blanket in her lap. "I think I forgot relationships could feel safe." He sat beside her carefully. Neither spoke immediately. Rain tapped steadily against the windows while lightning flashed somewhere farther downtown. Then Isaac asked quietly, "Can I tell you something honest?" She nodded. "The first time I met you, I thought—" He stopped briefly, searching for words. "I thought you were one of those people always making sure everybody else comfortable before yourself." Ramona laughed softly. "That obvious? To somebody paying attention, yeah. And now?" Isaac looked at her for a moment before answering. "Now I think you're learning you deserve room too." The sentence hit her harder than compliments ever did, because it felt earned, real. Ramona stared at him for a second longer than usual. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, soft at first, uncertain. Isaac paused briefly, like he wanted to make sure she meant it, before kissing her back. Outside, rain kept falling against the city. Inside, for the first time in years, Ramona felt something she almost forgot relationships could give a person: relief. The birthday dinner happened in early summer at a rooftop restaurant downtown overlooking the river. Ramona almost didn't go. She stood inside Alicia's bathroom, holding one earring while debating whether the entire night was a bad idea. "It's one dinner," Alicia said from the doorway. "You know Clement might be there." "Might." Ramona gave her a look through the mirror. "That man shares the same friend group with Isaac. Don't say might like it's random." Alicia folded her arms. "And what exactly you planning to do forever? Hide every time he enters a room?" Ramona sighed. "That's not what I'm doing." "Then go eat your overpriced salmon and act grown." Despite herself, Ramona laughed. An hour later, she sat in Isaac's car, watching downtown Jacksonville lights reflect across the windshield, while traffic crawled toward the parking garage. "You nervous?" Isaac asked. "A little. We can leave whenever you want." That answer relaxed her more than reassurance would have. No pressure, no expectation. By the time they reached the rooftop restaurant, warm air carried music and conversation across the open patio. String lights glowed overhead, while groups crowded around long tables, laughing too loudly over drinks. The birthday dinner already looked halfway underway. People waved when they arrived. Finally, one of the women shouted, "We thought y'all canceled." Isaac pulled out Ramona's chair naturally before sitting beside her. Small gesture, but she noticed herself relaxing again. The table buzzed with overlapping conversations almost immediately. Sports, rent prices, vacation plans, somebody complaining about dating apps. Ramona actually enjoyed herself at first. That surprised her. For so long, social gatherings with Clement felt emotionally unpredictable. She always monitored the atmosphere carefully, waiting for irritation, criticism, or subtle embarrassment to creep in. Tonight felt different, lighter. At one point, Isaac leaned toward her, while everybody argued over whether Jacksonville was improving or getting worse. "You hungry?" or pretending to read the menu dramatically. Ramona smiled down at the menu. "I'm deciding." "You've been deciding 10 minutes. Food choices matter." "No." "You scared to pronounce something wrong." She looked at him immediately, because he said it jokingly, but gently enough that it didn't sting. "You noticed that? You started doing it after dating Clement." The honesty caught her off guard. Before she could answer, movement near the restaurant entrance shifted the energy around the table. Several people looked up at once. Then conversation slowed. Ramona turned instinctively. Clement stood near the hostess station, dark button-down shirt. tense expression already forming before he even fully processed what he was seeing. His eyes landed directly on Isaac, then Ramona, then Isaac again. The entire table seemed to hold its breath. Nobody moved immediately. One of the men near the end of the table tried forcing normalcy into his voice. "Yo, Clem, we thought you wasn't coming." Clement didn't answer him. He kept staring at Isaac, sitting beside Ramona. And for the first time since she left, Ramona saw genuine shock on his face. Not irritation, not pride, shock. Like some part of him believed this situation could never become real until he physically saw it himself. Isaac stayed calm. "Hey," he said evenly. Clement laughed once under his breath. That laugh made Ramona's stomach tighten instantly because she recognized it. It was the sound he made when anger started replacing embarrassment. "This what we doing now?" he asked. Nobody answered. The birthday girl looked ready to disappear through the floor. Ramona sat up straighter in her chair. "Clement." "Nah," he cut in immediately, eyes still locked on Isaac. "This been happening?" Isaac spoke before Ramona could. "No." Clement looked at him sharply. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe." That answer poured gasoline on the tension instantly. Several people shifted uncomfortably around the table. Ramona's pulse thudded hard enough she could feel it in her neck. "Can we not do this here?" she asked carefully. Clement finally looked directly at her. That hurt worse somehow, because his expression carried confusion underneath the anger. "You serious?" he asked. Him. Ramona hated the implication in that single word. Like Isaac wasn't even a person, just betrayal standing in front of him. "We're here for Marcus's birthday," she said. "Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." Clement stared at her for another second before shaking his head slowly. "Nah, this already bigger than you making it sound." Then he looked back at Isaac. "You, my friend." Isaac didn't flinch. "You lost her before I ever took her to dinner." The table went completely still after that. Clement's jaw tightened immediately. "Oh, so y'all dating. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for drinks anymore." Ramona felt heat climbing into her chest because she hated public conflict more than almost anything. Old instincts started waking up fast. Fix this. Calm him down. Smooth it over. But another voice answered immediately now. "Why are you still protecting his comfort?" Clement laughed again, sharper this time. "That's crazy." Then directly to Ramona. "You couldn't find nobody else?" The disrespect in the question snapped something inside her immediately. "I'm not doing this with you. With me." He looked genuinely offended. "You sitting here with my friend. Your friend who treated me better in conversations than you did in 4 years." The words came out before she softened them. Clement stared at her like she slapped him. Isaac leaned slightly forward. "We should take this outside." "You want to go outside?" Clement asked immediately. The challenge underneath it was obvious, but Isaac stayed seated. "No. I'm saying this dinner doesn't deserve this." That calmness made Clement angrier, because there was nothing to fight against. No insults, no macho performance, just truth sitting there publicly where everybody could see it. Clement stepped back from the table finally. "Yeah," he muttered bitterly. Everybody got jokes now. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator entrance. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Ramona pushed her chair back. "I'll talk to him." Isaac looked up immediately. "You sure?" She nodded. Outside near the parking garage elevator, humid night air wrapped around the concrete walkway while traffic hummed below. Clement stood near the railing with both hands on top of his head. The moment he heard her approach, he turned around. "You happy now?" Ramona stopped several feet away. "This isn't about making you unhappy. You dating my friend. You spent years treating me like I was lucky you tolerated me. That doesn't justify this. You think this happened overnight?" Clement scoffed loudly. "So what? Y'all was building emotional connection behind my back?" "No," she said firmly. "I was begging for emotional connection inside my relationship." That hit him, she could tell immediately. His face changed slightly. Then anger rushed back over it to cover whatever else he felt. "So he the hero now?" "Nobody said that. You always got an answer for everything." Ramona crossed her arms against the warm wind. "No. I finally stopped apologizing for things that weren't wrong." Clement looked away toward downtown lights for a second before speaking again. "You know what's messed up?" "What?" I actually thought you'd come back eventually. The honesty in that sentence caught her off guard, not because it sounded romantic, because it sounded true. He really believed she would always remain emotionally available, no matter how unhappy she became. Ramona looked at him carefully. I almost did. Clement's eyes lifted toward hers immediately. But every time we talked after I left, she continued, you kept asking how my pain affected you. For once, he didn't interrupt. Cars moved below them through wet streets, while distant music drifted from the rooftop behind her. Then Clement asked the question that finally revealed how deeply reality had hit him. You love him? Ramona hesitated, not because she didn't know, because she understood the answer would close something permanently between them. Finally, she said softly, I feel safe with him. Clement looked down immediately after that, and somehow that answer hurt him more than if she had simply said yes. After the rooftop dinner, Clement stopped pretending the breakup was temporary. Before that night, some part of him still acted like Ramona was going through a phase, a dramatic reaction, a separation that would eventually wear itself out once emotions cooled down. Seeing her beside Isaac changed that, not because they were holding hands dramatically or trying to humiliate him. It was the ease between them, the way Ramona no longer looked tense every time somebody spoke, the way Isaac listened when she talked, the way she laughed without checking whether somebody was about to make fun of her for it. Clement noticed all of it at once, and afterward, regret started following him into places where his ego used to protect him. Work became harder first. One Monday morning he snapped at an employee for stacking invoices incorrectly, then spent the next hour sitting in his office staring at his phone instead of finishing reports. Ramona's contact still sat pinned at the top of his messages. Most recent conversation, I feel safe with him. He reread the sentence, constantly. Safe. The word bothered him because he never considered himself dangerous. In his mind, dangerous men cheated openly, hit women, destroyed property, screamed. He paid bills, stayed loyal, worked hard. That counted for something, didn't it? At least that's what he kept telling himself. But late at night, alone inside the townhouse, other memories started surfacing whether he wanted them to or not. Ramona apologizing after he embarrassed her publicly. Ramona shrinking conversations before they became arguments. Ramona sitting beside him on the couch, looking emotionally exhausted, while he dismissed her concerns as overthinking. For years he translated emotional harm into weakness on her part, instead of carelessness on his. Now the house felt different without her there. Too organized, too quiet. Her candles disappeared first, then her products from the bathroom, then the framed picture of her grandmother from the hallway table. Clement noticed each missing thing slowly, like the relationship was still leaving in pieces months later. One evening, he opened the kitchen cabinet and realized he hadn't bought groceries properly in over a week. The refrigerator held beer, bottled water, leftover takeout containers, and expired lunch meat. That hit him harder than expected too, not because Ramona cooked, because she cared about details, about comfort, about creating warmth inside spaces. He used to act like those things came naturally, instead of costing emotional effort. Now he microwaved frozen food, alone at midnight, while sports commentators shouted through the television. The loneliness started feeling embarrassingly personal. He called Ramona more often after that. Sometimes she answered. Mostly she didn't. When she did pick up, the conversations rarely lasted long. One Wednesday evening he caught her while she was leaving work. You busy? I'm driving. So? Ramona sighed softly through the speaker. What's up, Clement? He sat in his truck outside the townhouse, gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. I've been thinking, that usually means trouble. The joke stung because she sounded calm saying it. Not bitter, not emotional, just honest. I'm serious. I know, I messed up. A long pause followed. Then Ramona answered carefully, yes. No cushioning, no immediate reassurance. The directness unsettled him. You don't got nothing else to say? What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something. Clement leaned his head back against the seat. I didn't realize how bad things got. Ramona was quiet long enough that he thought maybe the call dropped. Then she asked, You didn't realize? Or you didn't think I'd leave? That question irritated him immediately because it felt too accurate. You always make stuff sound worse than it was. The moment the sentence left his mouth, He regretted it, because he heard himself clearly, for maybe the first time. Ramona laughed once, not happily. That's exactly what I mean. Then she ended the call. Clement sat alone in the truck afterward, feeling angry at himself and defensive at the same time. That became the cycle now. Regret, then pride, then regret again. Around this time, Isaac stopped answering his messages entirely. Not hostile, just done. Clement texted him twice after the rooftop confrontation. We need to talk. Then later, you dead wrong for this. No response. At first, Clement focused all his anger there because it felt easier than fully confronting what happened with Ramona. Isaac betrayed him. Isaac crossed boundaries. Isaac broke loyalty. But underneath that anger sat another truth he hated more. Isaac treated Ramona with a level of care Clement stopped offering long before the relationship ended. And deep down, Clement knew that. A few weeks later, he ran into Alicia, accidentally, at a gas station near Arlington. She spotted him first, while pumping gas. Her expression hardened immediately. Clement almost got back into his truck to avoid the interaction entirely. Too late. Alicia walked over holding her keys. You look rough. Good to see you too. She shrugged. What you expect? Clement glanced away. How's she doing? Alicia studied him carefully before answering. Better. The word hit him harder than insults would have. Better. Not destroyed. Not heartbroken forever. Healing. She seeing him serious? Clement asked. Alicia laughed under her breath immediately. You still making everything about competition? I asked a question, and I answered it. Clement rubbed his jaw tightly. I loved her. Alicia's expression softened slightly then. I think you did, she admitted. But loving somebody ain't the same as taking care of their spirit. The sentence stayed with him all night afterward. A few days later, he finally admitted something to himself he'd avoided for years. He talked to Ramona like somebody who would never leave, and that belief made him lazy with her heart, not intentionally, but consistently. Once that realization surfaced, it became harder to ignore other things too. How often he mocked vulnerability, how often he dismissed emotional conversations, how quickly he treated her sensitivity like weakness instead of trust. For the first time in his adult life, Clement started questioning the version of masculinity he inherited from other men around him. Work hard, pay bills, don't talk feelings too much, women emotional anyway. He grew up hearing versions of those ideas constantly. Now, he sat alone realizing none of them helped him build intimacy. Eventually, he texted Ramona one message without expecting a response. I think I finally understand why you got tired. 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then returned again. Finally, her message came through. That doesn't change what happened. Clement stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I know. A week later, Ramona agreed to meet him near the riverfront for coffee. Not reconciliation. Closure. At least that's what she told herself beforehand while sitting inside her car watching boats move slowly across the water. She almost left twice before he arrived. When Clement finally walked toward the outdoor seating area, he looked older somehow. Not dramatically, just worn down around the eyes. You look good, he said carefully after sitting down. Ramona gave a small nod. You too. That was a lie, but a polite one. For a minute, neither knew where to begin. Traffic hummed behind them, while wind pushed against the umbrellas over nearby tables. Finally, Clement exhaled heavily. I owe you a real apology. Ramona looked at him quietly. I spent years acting like your emotions were inconveniences instead of communication. The honesty surprised her enough that she didn't interrupt. Clement rubbed both hands together slowly. And I think... He paused. I think I liked feeling needed more than I liked actually showing up emotionally. Ramona stared down into her coffee cup. That statement sounded painfully true. You made me feel small a lot, she admitted. I know. No, I don't think you do. Clement nodded slowly. You right. Another pause settled between them. Not hostile this time. Heavy. Then Clement looked directly at her. I would fix it if I could. Ramona swallowed carefully before answering. I know. And? She met his eyes fully then. But I'm not responsible for fixing the version of you that broke me. The sentence landed softly. No cruelty attached. No revenge. Just truth. Clement looked away toward the river immediately after that. His eyes watered before he could hide it. And for the first time since she met him at that gas station years earlier, Ramona realized something surprising. He genuinely never thought he could lose her. After the conversation near the river, something finally loosened inside Ramona. Not instantly. She didn't walk away magically healed or emotionally untouched, but the constant pull backward started fading. For months after leaving Clement, part of her still carried invisible responsibility for him. His loneliness, his regret, his growth, his pain. That meeting helped her understand something important. Feeling sorry for somebody and belonging to them are not the same thing. By the time summer settled fully over Jacksonville again, Ramona stopped checking her phone, hoping for emotional closure from conversations that already ended. Life became more present, more ordinary, and strangely, that ordinary feeling brought her peace. One Saturday morning, she and Isaac sat at a laundromat because his apartment dryer stopped working again. "You know what this relationship missing?" Isaac asked, while staring at the spinning machines. "What?" "Financial stability." Ramona laughed into her coffee. "You should have thought about that before dating a woman with student loans. You got student loans and decorative pillows. Dangerous combination. You own 17 history books about wars nobody asked for. They're educational. They're dusty." An older woman folding towels nearby smiled to herself, listening to them. Moments like that became important to Ramona. Nothing dramatic happening. No emotional roller coasters. No exhausting arguments disguised as passion. Just comfort. The more stable her life became, the more she realized how addicted she once was to emotional unpredictability. Chaos used to feel intense enough to mistake for love. Now she noticed how peaceful relationships actually required consistency more than excitement. Isaac never rushed her emotionally either. That mattered deeply. Even after they officially became a couple, he gave her room to move at her own pace. No pressure to move in immediately. No guilt when she needed time alone. No possessiveness disguised as romance. One evening, while cooking dinner together at his apartment, Ramona accidentally burned garlic bread because she got distracted talking. Smoke drifted lightly through the kitchen, while Isaac opened windows laughing. "You trying to kill us? You, supposed to be helping. I was, emotionally. That don't count." He grinned while waving a kitchen towel near the smoke detector. Watching him laugh during minor problems still surprised her sometimes. With Clement, small inconveniences often infected the entire mood of a room. Now mistakes stayed small. That difference changed her nervous system slowly. Around this same time, Isaac started opening up more about himself too. For a long while, Ramona noticed he listened far more than he shared. One night while driving back from visiting her mother, she finally asked directly, "You always this private?" Isaac kept his eyes on the road. "Probably." "Why?" He shrugged lightly. "My dad believed men should keep stuff to themselves." Ramona looked toward him. "That healthy?" "Nope." She smiled faintly. "Then why you still do it?" The question lingered a while before he answered. "Because when my parents divorced, my mama used to cry to me about everything." His voice sounded different now, more careful. "I became the calm one, real young." Ramona understood that immediately. Too immediately. "So now you take care of everybody else." Basically, she stared out the window for a second, watching city lights slide past. "That sounds familiar." Isaac glanced toward her briefly and smiled. "Yeah. That's probably why we understood each other early." Conversations between them deepened naturally after that. Money, marriage, fear, family habits they wanted to unlearn someday. One rainy Sunday afternoon, they sat on his couch eating takeout, while a financial spreadsheet stayed open on his laptop. Isaac frowned at the screen. "You realize children expensive, right?" Ramona laughed. "You discussing imaginary kids like they already on the way. I'm preparing emotionally. You barely prepare dinner emotionally. That's disrespectful." She leaned against him smiling while thunder rolled outside. Then Isaac asked casually, "You ever think about marriage still?" The question surprised her because his tone carried no pressure underneath it, just curiosity. Ramona thought for a moment before answering. "I used to think marriage meant proving you could survive somebody." Isaac looked down at her. "And now? I think it's supposed to feel safer than that." He nodded slowly. No speech, no dramatic promises, and somehow that restraint made her trust him more. Meanwhile, Clement began changing too. though from a distance. Ramona heard pieces indirectly through mutual friends. He started therapy, cut back on drinking, became less reactive at work. At first, she didn't know how to feel hearing those things. Part of her felt angry. Why now? Why, after destruction, finally had consequences? Another part felt relieved, because despite everything, she never truly wanted him miserable forever. She simply wanted peace for herself. One evening, Isaac found her unusually quiet after she got off the phone with Alicia. What happened? Apparently, Clement started counseling. Isaac nodded once. That good. You don't feel weird about it? Why would I? Ramona played with the edge of her sleeve, thoughtfully. I don't know. Some people act like growth only matters if it benefits them personally. Isaac leaned back against the couch. People changing for the better still matters even if relationships don't survive. That answer settled something inside her she didn't realize remained tense. Because Isaac never treated Clement like an enemy to defeat, and Ramona no longer needed Clement to remain broken in order to justify leaving. By fall, she finally moved out of Alicia's apartment into her own place near San Marco. Small, one-bedroom, old hardwood floors, terrible parking situation. She loved it immediately. The first night there, she sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes eating takeout, while ceiling fans hummed overhead. Isaac walked in carrying another load from the car. You own more candles than any human should. They create atmosphere. They create fire hazards. She laughed while reaching for another box. A few minutes later, Isaac disappeared briefly into the kitchen. When he returned, he looked strangely nervous. Ramona noticed instantly. What? He rubbed the back of his neck once. So, this probably not romantic timing. That sentence terrifying already. I had a different plan originally. Isaac. He took a slow breath, then pulled a small ring box from his pocket. Ramona froze immediately. I know your relationship before me made commitment feel heavy, he said carefully, so I don't want to make some huge performance out of this. Her eyes widened slowly. But I love you. He swallowed once. And every version of life I picture now got you in it. Ramona covered her mouth with one hand automatically. Isaac shook his head lightly. See, now I'm nervous. She laughed through sudden tears. You should be. That bad? You, proposing in the middle of unpacking boxes. I told you. The timing fell apart. She stared at him for another second before asking softly, You sure? Isaac's expression changed immediately after that question. Not offended. Certain. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. Ramona looked around the apartment then. Half-open boxes. Paper towels sitting on the counter because she forgot to buy napkins. Rain beginning again outside the windows. Nothing cinematic. Nothing polished. And somehow it felt more genuine than every fantasy she used to build in her head about love. She nodded slowly. Yes. Isaac let out a breath, like he'd been holding it for hours. Then he slid the ring onto her finger, while laughing nervously at himself. And standing there barefoot on hardwood floors inside an unfinished apartment, Ramona realized peace felt far more powerful than chaos ever did. Ramona woke up before sunrise on her wedding day, not because alarms went off. Her body simply refused to sleep anymore. For a few minutes, she lay still in the hotel room listening to the air conditioner hum, while soft gray morning light crept through the curtains. Her phone screen read 5:18 a.m. Beside the window, her wedding dress hung from the closet door. Simple, ivory fabric. Nothing huge or dramatic. Exactly what she wanted. A year earlier, the sight probably would have overwhelmed her emotionally. Now she mostly felt calm, nervous too, but calm underneath it. That surprised her. Alicia snored softly from the other bed across the room with a satin bonnet halfway sliding off her head. Makeup bags and shoes covered almost every available surface already. Ramona smiled to herself. Then her thoughts drifted somewhere unexpected. Back to the anniversary night at Clement's townhouse. The candles, the cold salmon, the sound of his keys hitting the counter. Funny enough, she no longer replayed that memory with anger, mostly disbelief. She couldn't believe how long she convinced herself emotional loneliness was normal. A soft knock sounded at the hotel door around 6:30. Her mother entered carrying 2 coffees and immediately stopped when she saw Ramona already awake. I knew it, she said. You ain't sleep. I tried. Her mother handed her a cup before sitting carefully near the edge of the bed. For a minute, neither said much. The room slowly brightened around them, while Alicia remained completely unconscious in the background. Then her mother looked toward the dress hanging near the window. "You happy?" The question sounded different this time than years earlier, after Thanksgiving dinner with Clement. Back then, her mother asked hopefully. Now she asked carefully. Ramona wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. "Yeah," she answered softly. "For real this time." Her mother nodded slowly, eyes already watering a little. "Good." Ramona leaned her head lightly against her shoulder. "You worried before?" Her mother let out a long breath through her nose. "Baby." She shook her head. "I used to pray about you." Ramona looked up. "What you mean?" "I mean, I watched you disappear slowly and couldn't figure out how to pull you back without pushing you away." The honesty hit hard because her mother rarely spoke emotionally that directly. "You never said anything." "Oh, I said little stuff." "You did. But grown women don't leave relationships because people lecture them," her mother replied. "They leave when they finally tired themselves." That sounded painfully true. Alicia suddenly rolled over dramatically from the other bed. "Can y'all stop having emotional movie scenes while people sleeping?" Ramona burst into laughter immediately. Her mother shook her head, smiling. "You supposed to be helping today?" "I am helping. Emotionally." Lord. The rest of the morning moved fast after that. Hair appointments, makeup artists, family members calling non-stop because nobody in black families ever arrives anywhere quietly. At one point, Aunt Denise walked into the room carrying garment bags and immediately frowned. "Why everybody so calm?" "Somebody should be panicking." Alicia pointed toward Ramona. "She weirdly peaceful." "Good," Aunt Denise replied. "Marriage stressful enough. Wedding day don't need extra drama too." While makeup brushes moved across her face, Ramona caught herself studying her reflection carefully, not critically, not searching for flaws, just present. That felt new too. Years earlier, she spent enormous emotional energy trying to become easier to love, less emotional, less sensitive, less difficult. Now she looked at herself and saw somebody whole instead of somebody constantly adjusting. Downstairs at the ceremony venue, Isaac was falling apart privately, at least according to Marcus, who found him pacing near the hallway outside the ballroom. "You, sweating through your shirt." "I'm fine. You look like you owe money." Isaac rubbed both hands over his face. "Why my stomach doing this?" Marcus laughed. "Because you getting married. People do this voluntarily? You too late to question it now." Isaac glanced toward the ballroom doors nervously. The venue overlooked the river through wide glass windows, where late afternoon sunlight reflected off the water. White flowers lined the aisle, and soft music drifted through the room while guests settled into seats. Nothing extravagant, intimate, warm, exactly what both of them wanted. Isaac checked his watch for maybe the 10th time. "You think she nervous?" Marcus smirked. "You definitely more nervous than she is." "That don't answer my question." Before Marcus could respond, Isaac's mother walked over and fixed his tie without warning. "Stop pacing." "I'm not pacing. You inherited anxiety from your father. I inherited student loans from my father, too." She laughed and kissed his cheek. Then more softly she added, "She loves you. Breathe." That finally slowed him down a little. Upstairs, Ramona stood fully dressed while Alicia adjusted the veil one final time. "You ready?" Alicia asked. Ramona looked toward the mirror, then toward the hallway outside the room, then back again. Her chest tightened briefly. Not fear exactly. The weight of realizing life could have gone very differently. If she stayed with Clement longer, if she kept doubting herself, if she confused endurance for love forever. A knock sounded at the door. 5 minutes, somebody called. Alicia immediately started crying. "Oh Lord, here I go." "You crying before me?" Ramona laughed. "Yes, because waterproof mascara, expensive." Her mother stepped closer and squeezed Ramona's hands gently. "Listen to me." Ramona looked at her. "You ain't walking into this marriage begging somebody to choose you." Tears filled Ramona's eyes instantly after that, because her mother understood exactly what healed inside her. A few minutes later, music shifted downstairs. Guests stood slowly. Isaac turned toward the ballroom entrance, and the moment Ramona appeared at the top of the aisle, Every nervous thought left his face completely. He looked overwhelmed. Not triumphant, not performative. Grateful, that was the word. Ramona noticed it immediately. As she walked forward holding her mother's arm, she realized something surprising. She didn't feel pressure to impress him, didn't feel pressure to earn love through perfection, didn't feel afraid of becoming emotionally inconvenient someday. The ceremony itself stayed simple. Personal vows, family laughter when Isaac's voice cracked halfway through speaking, Aunt Denise crying openly without shame in the second row. At one point during vows, Isaac looked directly at Ramona and said, "You never deserved to feel like love was something you had to survive." The room went completely still after that. Ramona's throat tightened hard enough she almost couldn't answer her own vows afterward, because he understood not only what happened to her, but what it cost her internally. When the officiant finally pronounced them married, applause filled the ballroom, while sunlight reflected brightly across the river behind them. Isaac kissed her softly. People cheered. Alicia screamed loud enough to embarrass everybody, and standing there surrounded by family, noise, laughter, and warmth, Ramona realized love felt lighter when nobody was asking her to shrink inside it. Marriage turned out less cinematic than people online made it look. Nobody posted the boring parts, the arguments about groceries, the exhaustion, the nights when both people too tired to communicate correctly. 3 months after the wedding, Ramona stood inside their kitchen holding an electric bill while Isaac searched the couch cushions for his wallet. "How is this bill this high?" Isaac looked up from the living room. "Air conditioning. We live in Florida, not the sun." "Feels like the sun." Ramona shook her head while opening the refrigerator. "You left orange juice in here with 2 drops left again. That's still juice. That's evidence." Isaac laughed from the couch. Those moments mattered more than she expected, not because conflict disappeared, because conflict no longer felt emotionally dangerous. That difference changed everything. There were still hard seasons. One year, Isaac's school cut funding, and his coaching stipend disappeared unexpectedly. Money tightened fast after that. Ramona picked up extra shifts at the dental office while Isaac started tutoring students in the evenings for additional income. Stress crept into the apartment slowly. One Thursday night, they argued over something small that wasn't actually small. Isaac forgot to mail a payment. Ramona discovered it while sorting papers at the kitchen counter. "You said you handled this." "I thought I did." "You thought?" "I've been working nonstop too, Ramona." "I know that." "Then why you talking to me like I'm your employee?" The room grew tense immediately after that. Years earlier, tension like this would have sent Ramona into emotional panic. Now she recognized something important. Nobody was trying to humiliate the other person. Nobody was reaching for emotional weak spots. They were frustrated, human, tired. That didn't make the moment painless, but it kept the argument from becoming destructive. Isaac rubbed both hands over his face after a minute. "My bad," he muttered first. Ramona leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. "I could have said it calmer, too." Another pause. Then Isaac walked toward her. "You hungry?" She stared at him. "That's your repair strategy?" "It's historically effective." She laughed, despite herself. An hour later, they sat on the couch eating cheap tacos while reviewing finances together, like teammates instead of opponents. That became the rhythm of their marriage. Not perfection, repair. Even when they accidentally hurt each other, neither treated vulnerability like ammunition. Ramona noticed the difference most during emotionally difficult periods, especially after her grandmother died. The funeral happened during a cold January rain that made the cemetery grounds muddy and miserable. Ramona held herself together through most of the service because family automatically leaned on her during crises. By evening, she was emotionally drained. Back home, she sat on the edge of their bed still wearing funeral clothes while staring blankly at the wall. Isaac walked in carrying tea. "You eat anything today?" She shook her head. "Not hungry." He sat beside her without pushing conversation immediately. After several minutes, Ramona finally whispered, "I don't know who I am without her." Tears came hard after that, messy, heavy, the kind grief pulls from somewhere deep in the body. Isaac held her through all of it, without trying to fix the emotions quickly. No lectures about being strong, no discomfort with tears, just presence. Later that night, while lying awake beside him, Ramona realized something else healthy love required. Witnessing, not solving every emotion immediately, just staying, A couple years into marriage, they started discussing children more seriously. Isaac approached the topic like he approached everything important, carefully. One Sunday morning while grocery shopping, he stood staring at diaper prices near the pharmacy section. These tiny humans expensive before they even arrive. Ramona laughed while tossing apples into the cart. You researching already? I'm preparing psychologically. You still eat cereal for dinner sometimes. That has nothing to do with fatherhood. Eventually, the conversations became real. Doctor appointments, budget adjustments, conversations about parenting styles shaped by their own childhoods. Ramona worried openly about becoming emotionally overwhelmed the way her mother once had been from constant responsibility. Isaac worried about emotional distance. My dad provided, he admitted one night while assembling furniture in their apartment, but I don't remember him emotionally present much. Ramona sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, folding baby clothes. You already more emotionally available than most men we grew up around. Isaac looked unconvinced. What if I mess it up anyway? You will sometimes? He blinked. That reassuring? I'm serious. She smiled softly. Everybody mess up parenting sometimes. Kids remember repair too. Their twins arrived after 14 exhausting hours of labor during a humid August night. Boy and girl. Isaac cried almost immediately when the nurse placed the babies into his arms. Not movie tears either. Real ones. Shaky breathing. Red eyes. Complete emotional collapse. Ramona laughed weakly from the hospital bed. You crying harder than me. Isaac looked down at the babies in disbelief. They so small. That's usually how babies start. I'm serious. His voice cracked again. Watching him hold their children affected Ramona more deeply than she expected, because she trusted him emotionally with fragile things. That trust mattered more to her than romance ever could now. The first year of parenting nearly destroyed their sleep schedules. The twins rarely cried one at a time. They coordinated chaos like tiny roommates, plotting against adults. Some nights Ramona paced the apartment at 3 a.m. holding one baby, while Isaac warmed bottles half awake in the kitchen. Other nights they snapped at each other from exhaustion. You said you packed diapers. I thought you packed diapers. Why would I think you packed them if I packed them? That sentence made no sense. There were moments of tension, frustration, overstimulation, but even during difficult seasons, Ramona noticed something healing happening quietly inside her. She no longer feared being emotionally abandoned every time conflict appeared. That fear used to live in her body constantly. Now disagreements stayed temporary. One night after finally getting both babies asleep, Ramona found Isaac sitting alone on the couch staring at the baby monitor screen. You okay? Isaac nodded slowly. Yeah. You got the stressed forehead. He laughed softly. I was thinking about how different this house feels from the one I grew up in. Ramona sat beside him carefully. How? Nobody walking on eggshells. The sentence hit her unexpectedly hard, because she knew exactly what he meant. No emotional unpredictability controlling the atmosphere. No fear of saying the wrong thing. No constant tension hiding underneath ordinary conversations. Their home wasn't perfect, but it felt emotionally safe. And years earlier, Ramona honestly didn't know relationships like that existed outside television. Years later, Ramona still thought about that anniversary night sometimes. Not often, and not with the kind of pain that once sat in her chest like a bruise. Mostly the memory arrived unexpectedly during ordinary moments, lighting candles in her own kitchen, hearing thunder outside, watching Isaac help the twins wash marker stains off their hands, while both children talked over each other loudly. Life looked so different now that the past almost felt borrowed from another version of herself. One Friday evening, after finally getting the twins asleep, Ramona stood alone on the apartment balcony, overlooking the city lights. The air smelled like rain again. Jacksonville never really changed that part. Inside, Isaac folded laundry while half watching a basketball game with the volume low enough not to wake the kids. Their daughter had insisted earlier that day she wanted to become a veterinarian astronaut. Their son cried for 20 minutes because his grilled cheese got cut into triangles instead of squares. Real life, messy life, good life. Isaac slid the balcony door open and stepped outside, holding 2 mugs. You disappeared. I needed air. He handed her tea before leaning beside her against the railing. For a minute, they watched traffic move below in comfortable silence. Then Ramona smiled faintly. You know what's crazy? What? There was a time I thought leaving Clement ruined my life. Isaac looked over at her carefully, but didn't interrupt. Ramona shook her head softly. I genuinely thought walking away meant I failed. Most people confuse surviving something with succeeding in it. She glanced toward him. That sounded very teacher-ish. I mentor youth. You teach ninth graders who throw pencils. Still mentorship. She laughed into her tea. Then her expression softened again. I spent years believing love meant enduring things quietly. Isaac nodded once. And now? Ramona looked through the balcony window toward the living room, where toys covered half the floor despite being cleaned up earlier. Now, she understood something differently. Love should expand a person, not reduce them into somebody constantly negotiating for emotional safety. I think... She paused briefly, searching for the right words. I think I confused being needed with being valued. The realization didn't feel dramatic anymore, just true. And once she finally understood it, she couldn't unsee how many people stayed inside emotionally draining relationships because leaving felt selfish. Especially women taught their entire lives to absorb discomfort gracefully. Inside the apartment, one of the twins started crying suddenly through the baby monitor. Isaac sighed immediately. That's yours. Ramona looked offended. Why mine? She got your dramatic timing. Our son literally screamed because grapes were cold yesterday. Fair point. They both laughed before Isaac headed back inside. Ramona stayed on the balcony another minute longer. Peace still surprised her sometimes. Not because life became easy. Bills still arrived. Parenting still exhausted them. Marriage still required effort. But effort no longer meant emotional survival. Around that same time, Clement sat alone inside a therapist's office across town, admitting truths he used to avoid completely. You loved her? The therapist asked. Clement nodded slowly. Yeah, then why did she feel emotionally unsafe? That question once would have irritated him immediately. Now he answered differently. Because I treated her emotions like problems instead of trust. The therapist wrote something down while Clement stared at the carpet. Years had passed since Ramona left, but accountability still arrived in waves sometimes. Unexpected moments. Delayed understanding. He dated casually after the breakup. Nothing lasted. Partly because he finally recognized patterns in himself that used to feel normal. Defensiveness. Emotional distance. Using provision as replacement for vulnerability. For the first time in his life, Clement stopped measuring himself only by whether he was a bad man. That standard had protected him too long. He wasn't abusive in the ways people publicly condemned, but he was careless with somebody who loved him deeply. And carelessness leaves damage too. One afternoon while cleaning out old storage boxes, he found the anniversary card Ramona bought years earlier, unopened, still sealed. Clement sat on the floor staring at it for a long time before finally placing it back inside the box. Some regrets don't disappear. People simply learn how to carry them honestly. Across the city, Ramona tucked the twins into bed while listening to their overlapping bedtime stories about dinosaurs and superheroes. Mommy, you and Daddy old? Isaac laughed from the hallway immediately. Extremely disrespectful. Ramona smiled. Go to sleep. After the twins finally settled down, she walked back toward the kitchen where Isaac stood rinsing dishes. He looked up when she entered. What? You happy? She asked suddenly. Isaac dried his hands slowly before answering. Yeah, even with all this chaos. He looked around the kitchen. Toy cups near the sink. Bills stacked beside unopened mail. One tiny sock somehow sitting near the refrigerator. Then back at her. Especially with all this chaos. Ramona felt emotion rise in her chest unexpectedly after hearing that, because years earlier, she spent so much energy trying to become easier to love. Smaller, quieter, less emotional, less demanding. Now she lived inside a home where her full humanity didn't threaten anybody, and that changed the way she moved through the world entirely. Later that night, after everybody finally fell asleep, rain started tapping softly against the windows again. Ramona lay awake briefly listening to it. Then her mind drifted one final time back to the woman sitting alone beside cold anniversary food years earlier. She wished she could reach backward somehow and tell that version of herself something important. Leaving wasn't failure. Staying somewhere that slowly destroys your confidence is not loyalty. And people who benefit from your silence will often call your boundaries disrespect. Most importantly, kindness was never her weakness. The real danger was believing she had to tolerate emotional pain to earn love. She didn't. Nobody does. Beside her, Isaac shifted half asleep and reached for her hand automatically under the blankets. Simple gesture. Unconscious even. Ramona closed her eyes, smiling softly in the dark. For the first time in her adult life, love no longer felt like something she had to survive. If this story touched you in any way, take a second and ask yourself this honestly. Have you ever stayed somewhere too long because you kept hoping someone would finally love you the way you deserved? A lot of people don't realize they're shrinking inside a relationship until they barely recognize themselves anymore. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What part of Ramona's story hit you the hardest? And if you know somebody who's constantly pouring into everyone else while feeling emotionally drained themselves, send them this video. It might reach them at the right time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of the Mr. Graham family. And remember, real love should bring peace to your life, not make you feel like you have to earn basic care every single day.